They're just Iraqis, you see. And while Americans were not aware of that statement reverberated all across the Middle East, to every Muslim in the Middle East. And the anger and the rage is boiling. You had the stationing of troops on Islamic holy lands, knowing exactly what that was going to do to Muslim sensibilities in Mecca and Medina. It was like rubbing their noses in it. It's like poking hornets' nests. I mean, every school kid knows what happens when you poke hornets' nests. And that's what they were doing throughout the 90s, just poking those hornets' nests. The no-fly zones, illegal no-fly zones. They never got permission of Congress. They never got permission of the UN. They just imposed them unilaterally through presidential decree. And they enforced them with bombs and missiles, in which Iraqis were getting killed every year, including a 13-year-old kid whose head was blown off by an Iran missile, enforcing the no-fly zones as he was tending his sheep. The cauldron was boiling and boiling and boiling. We were saying, the Future Freedom Foundation in the late 1990s, check it out on our website. Sheldon was writing about this. Sheldon Richmond, I was writing about this. If you continue doing this, the poking of the hornet's nest, you're going to reap what you sow. You're going to see terrorism on American soil. Because these people are getting angry and they have no way of striking back against the most powerful empire, the most powerful military in the history of the world. When 9/11 hit, we weren't surprised. We didn't predict, of course, the means that they were doing or the devastation that they would do it. But we weren't surprised at all. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to have predicted this. 1993, you know how they tell us this is the first instance of terrorism on American soil? It's just a bald-faced lie. It's a denial of reality. 1993. The terrorists attacked the very same target that they targeted in 2001, the World Trade Center. And Ramzi Youssef, one of the terrorists, appears before the federal judge at his sentencing because terrorism was treated as a crime, which it always has been, which it should be, rather than an act of war. He appears before the federal judge. And go read it online. You can Google Ramzi Youssef's sentencing hearing and you can see the anger and the rage. Now, you won't agree with everything this guy's saying, but what will seep through is the anger and the rage as he exclaims against U.S. foreign policy. You had the terrorist attacks against the USS Cole, the terrorist attacks against the U.S. embassies in Tanzania and Kenya, and all the while, this callous indifference. 9/11 comes along. It's just a continuation of the terrorist blowback, the anger and rage that was being produced in the Middle East in response to U.S. foreign policy. And the terrorists are simply saying, stop doing what you're doing. Leave us alone. Stop killing people over here. Just go home. But that's not what the U.S. did after 9/11. Not only are we not going to go home, we're going to teach you a very brutal lesson. We're going to continue doing more of what we've been doing. We're going to continue putting your nose into it. We're going to continue engaging in regime change, just like in Iran, just like in Guatemala, just like in Grenada, Panama. We go into Afghanistan. We drop bombs on a few weddings. We kill several thousand countless people. We don't capture the malefactor, the supposed malefactor of 9/11, but we accomplish something more important in the eyes of Washington. We accomplish a regime change, ousting the Taliban, a recalcitrant regime, with a puppet regime that now fits within the U.S. empire. More significantly, they decide that this is the perfect ambiance to achieve what the sanctions had not been able to achieve for some 11 or 12 years. Regime change in Iraq. Here's the perfect opportunity. So they invade this country with the support of a society that's filled with fear, filled with hysteria. They kill countless people. We don't know how many more Iraqis have died. Because you see, the Pentagon doesn't keep count of those people. They don't count. You only keep count of American dead. That sends a signal. The estimates range from 60,000 to 600,000. But again, you see, the mindset is it's worth it. That even though we didn't find those infamous weapons of mass destruction, we're here to liberate you. We're here to bring democracy to you. And the fact that we have killed your mother and your father, your daughters, your spouses, your relatives, your friends, that's worth it to you. Is there any doubt as to why people are so angry and rageful against this country? And the irony of it is that if there is another terrorist attack on American soil, say from an Iraqi, from a country that had never ever done anything against the United States, no attacks on the United States, no terrorism against the United States, wouldn't it be ironic if that terrorist says, the reason I'm doing this is because you invaded my country when my country had never done anything to your country? Because that's what they're doing with this occupation. This is the world's greatest terrorist-producing machine. The more they occupy, the more they kill, the more anger, the more helplessness, the more rage. They are producing their own supply of terrorists. And in the process of doing this, post 9/11, they use this as the excuse to come after us, to take away our freedoms, unfortunately with the support of people who have lost concept of these rights that go back to Magna Carta. Trial by jury, due process of law. They use that as the excuse to suspend, cancel habeas corpus. And that's why it's all rooted in U.S. foreign policy. Now, what's the answer to all this? The answer is truth and ideas on freedom. Because you see, if people have this concept that they hate us for our freedom and values, which is just a direct lie and a denial of reality, but if they believe that, if their minds are encrusted with falsehood and denials of reality, they're going to sit there and say, hey, I'm not going to give up my freedom to the terrorists. They're trying to take away my right to go to church every Sunday, and by golly, I'm going to fight here. I'm going to fight the terrorists. I'm going to fight the Muslims. I'm ready to go to war and all this. But if you're able to strip away those falsehoods and those deceptions, that denial of reality, and you say, look, what this is about is this. You are giving up centuries of rights that have been carved out by men and women that have given their very lives for these rights and liberties in return for a foreign policy that violates the very principles on which this country was founded. A foreign policy of empire and intervention. Now all of a sudden things change because you see now people are faced with a choice. And when people are faced with a choice, they start thinking. And they start saying, well, now wait a minute. You're saying that if I give up this foreign policy of empire and intervention that's involved with regime change and torturing people and invading countries and assassination, that we can now then once again have a society that's healthy and normal and well-balanced, where we don't have all these color-coded terrorist things and where we got freedom and peace and prosperity. You got it. That's your choice. And you see, once people are faced with that choice, then we've got a shot. Because I have a hunch that as people start realizing that that's the true choice, and you see, that's why they don't want us thinking about why they hate us. That's why they immediately go on attack, because the last thing they want people to be thinking about is the conduct and misconduct of the U.S. government in overseas affairs.